Ahead of this year's Oscars, there was a lot of discussion about the women nominated for awards at this year's ceremony. But as Frances McDormand pointed out in her acceptance speech, Hollywood is far from fixing its inclusion problem.
I have 2 words to leave with you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Inclusion rider.
An inclusion rider is an amendment to a contract which requires more inclusive and diverse casting for a film. One example of this is a contract requiring that half of all speaking roles for a film go to women. Currently, only about 30% of speaking roles go to women, and the numbers get even worse when we look at women from underrepresented communities. Dr. Stacy Smith, the founder and director of the University of Southern California's Annenberg Inclusion Initiative, is the pioneer behind the idea of inclusion writers.
Each year at Annenberg, we look at the top 100 grossing films, and we've been doing this from 2007 forward. And in 2016, when we released our last report, less than a third of all speaking characters were women. Only 3 of the films had an underrepresented female lead across 100, and 34 had a female lead or co-lead, girl or woman, but only 3 of those were underrepresented. And when you think about gender and race and you put these 2 things together, over 45 of the top 100 films do not feature at least one Black or African American female speaking character on screen. Over 65 do not feature an Asian or Asian American speaking character on screen. 72 do not feature a Latina, and over 90 have erased females from the LGBT community. So when we really think about gender and we intersect it with other really important indicators, we see that the bottom drops out for on-screen portrayals of girls and women from diverse backgrounds.
And this crisis isn't just on screen.
Across 1,223 directors over the last 11 years, only 4% of those directors are women. And of those 4%, only 8 were underrepresented women. 4 were women that were Black. 3 were Asian. It's really only 2 because 1 Asian woman worked twice on the Kung Fu Panda franchise, and across 1,100 films, only 1 Latina was a director. So the extension of what we see from on-screen is even worse when we look behind the camera.
Even for the small percentage of female directors who manage to break into the industry, storytelling opportunities can be limited.
When you look at female directors, or let's say Black or African American directors, they seem to be only given opportunities that correspond to their gender or their race. So about 80% of the time, we found in the last year of content, 80% of the time, if you had a Black director, you had a Black lead or co-lead of the story. And when you have a female director, you often have a female lead or co-lead. And what this suggests is that the entertainment industry, the film industry in specific, they're not giving opportunities to women to tell stories with male leading characters. They're not giving African American directors the opportunity to tell stories with Asian leads and Caucasian leads. The same luxury and privilege that's afforded to white male storytellers is not afforded to their peers. So one thing that has to happen is the uncoupling of the director race ethnicity from the lead character's race ethnicity. That's a bias that is perpetuated year in and year out. And these numbers haven't moved for, over a decade.
To reach gender parity in the next 5 years, every major film would need to add at least 5 speaking roles for women. Whether or not Hollywood reaches that goal, the list of contenders at this year's Oscars could signal a turning point in the industry. And Dr. Smith believes that as the number of empowered women in film continues to grow, women in the industry will drive even more change.
Anyone that has a degree of power can negotiate and advocate contractually so that certain conditions are met as a function of their employment. And one way to deal with the inclusion crisis in Hollywood is to simply get those A-listers to put in their contract that target inclusion goals on screen need to be met that match the world in which we live. So roughly 50% of the characters on screen would be girls and women. Roughly 40% would be from underrepresented racial ethnic groups. 20% would be characters with disabilities. It would proportionally match the world we live in. And you could do this below the line too, in saying that, unit heads or different folks in key decision-making roles below the line, they also have to be inclusive.